Pedro, St. James.
Here in Cayman, we measure our lives by storms, wind, rain, lightning, and the wild sea. Hear me now. Now I'm going to tell you the story about Pedro, St. James, and Cayman. This story's been handed down from the old people, and I'm going to tell you about the story of the lightning and the girl with the water bucket. But that'll come later. Before there can be the story of Pedro St. James, you gotta know about how the people come to Cayman. Now some of them come free and some of them come slave. But the first thing, there was nobody but animals living on Cayman.
The 22nd of April, 1586, we fell with an isle that had no people in it. There we found strange kinds of beasts and killed more than 20 alligators.
And first thing, it seemed like nobody even wanted Cayman. Not even after the British take our neighbor, Jamaica, from the Spanish.
The Caymans consist of 3 islands to the south of Cuba. Seizing these islands offers so few advantages that it seems pointless to become involved in building forts and spending funds there.
But Cayman was a beautiful place, covered with mahogany trees and thatch trees and all like that. And some soldiers that was with old Oliver Cromwell's army in Jamaica, Bordens and Wattlers, they like Cayman and they come here to live. And even some pirates like Rivero Pardal come round and talk about fighting all the British.
I went ashore at Caymanos and burned 20 houses in Fort Capitan Airy.
But them pirates never did any lasting harm. Most of them early people just left Cayman alone. We traded with Jamaica and Honduras, all kinds of things like mahogany, turtles, and slaves. The sea is everything to us. It brings us misery in the storm. It brings us salvation in fish and turtles to catch. It even brought us people who didn't think they'd ever come to Cayman, much less stay. Mr. Gall here, he come to Cayman to make maps, and he wrote this thing here about the people.
When a vessel has the misfortune to be wrecked on this island, some of the survivors generally choose to remain in a place where the necessaries of life are so easily acquired. These accidental visitors frequently enter into matrimonial engagements and so become settlers.
A is for anchor, the Cayman boys wave. B is for bowbell that steers them away.
And the sea brings us more than fish and turtles. It brings us another gift, ships. They wreck on our reefs. That was good for us because we could salvage all kinds of things from them, even wood for our houses. That's the law of the sea. Reverend Home Waddell got a little story to tell about that.
A fleet of canoes was making for us, and soon surrounded our helpless craft. The headman, advancing to the captain with 1 word of pity and 2 of business, agreed to take everything ashore on the usual terms of half for the work. Down came the sails and ropes, and up came everything from the hold. The cabin doors, fittings, and furnishings were by fair or foul means torn off and sent away.
So wet and so tired and hungry are we. There's no one to stop us like a settler on sea. So wet and so tired and hungry are we. There's no one to stop us like a settler on sea.
So it's time now for me to tell you about Pedro Castle and all of them things. A man named William Eaton, he came from Wiltshire, England, and he married Dorothy Borden, a Cayman woman, and they live on Cayman, just near her by spots. Now his wife gave William Eaton 3 children, but the poor woman died giving giving birth to the fourth. So William Eden, he married Bessa Clark, and she gave him 6 more children. But she had a reputation of being a miserable woman. Some say she made him so miserable, he left and went away to cut mahogany wood in Nicaragua. Now when he died there at Pearl Lagoon, William Eden left behind a widow, a big family, and Pedro St. James. And Pedro St. James was the biggest house in Cayman. Maybe he remembered them big Jamaican great houses. Maybe he was thinking about his home in Wiltshire in England. I don't know about that, but something must have inspired him to build the only great stone house in Cayman at Pedro Point, and he called it St. James. He built Pedro St. James in 1780 with thick stone walls. It was good protection from the weather and enemies. It could have lasted storms, the threat of Spaniards, French, Americans, and even pirates. Old William Eden is dead, and his son, William Eden the Younger, sells Pedro St. James to James Coe, his brother-in-law, for £120. But Pedro St. James had a planting ground, cotton fields, and all like that. And that meant plenty of work, and plenty of people needed to do that work. Slaves, their blood ran in my father's veins. It runs in me, but so does the masters. Cayman didn't have no big plantations like they did in Jamaica. Half of us was free and half of us was slave. And slaves did slave work. They worked the plantations, picked the cotton, cooked the food, cut mahogany, worked in the fields and the house. And they built a Pedro St. James for old William Eden. Now William Eden the Younger comes to Mr. James Coe Sr. and buys Pedro St. James back. Now all kinds of important things going on at Pedro St. James. The main room is being used to hold court, and down below, prisoners are held in the jail cell. James Shearer Jackson sits in that little cell 6 months waiting to be tried for killing Joseph Tatum. Now that's a story. Tatum shoots Jackson's horse, and them men had a terrible fight. Goes for Jackson. Jackson pulls the dagger because his arm was broke and he couldn't fight good. And that was the end of Tatum. He died from Jackson's stab, all for killing a whole horse. So Jackson spent 6 months waiting in the Pedro St. James jail for trial. But I guess the castle didn't keep him locked up too tight, because he got together with a slave woman. And 9 months later, there was another mouse to feed. Now the reason Jackson sitting for so long in Pedro St. James was this. There was getting to be too many people in Cayman for the old way of running things. Things was getting complicated. Jamaica's supposed to look after us, but they don't care. And England? I don't think they even know where Cayman is. So who's to make good laws for us if we don't do it ourselves? So Mr. Drayton and Mr. Watler and Mr. Borden, being our magistrates, write and carry a good letter to the governor of Jamaica and put it to him that people wasn't respecting the law.
Grand Caymanas, October 26th, 1831. To His Excellency the Earl of Belmore, King's House, Jamaica. Sir,
But they didn't get any satisfaction from that governor in Jamaica. So we gonna make our own rules if Jamaica won't pay any attention to us. 6 weeks later, they hold a big important meeting at Pedro St. James.
Gentlemen, please. The next nominated gentleman has responded by appointing St. Jail and the authority for raising St. James, I have to deal with judges.
As a merchant, I require a sound legal...
At a meeting held at St. James on the 5th of December 1831, it was decided that representatives should be elected for the different districts throughout the island for the purpose of framing local laws for the island's better government.
Now England didn't think so much of this. They're saying, what are those Caymanians talking about now? But there was no going back. At Pedro St. James, the people of Cayman said loud that democracy would rule their islands. And soon after, Pedro St. James would witness another great event in the island's history. It unlocked a chain from the heart of more than half the people of Cayman. From the steps of the big house, Captain Anthony Park from the 84th Regiment of Foot read a proclamation. It was the year of our Lord, 1835.
The Slavery Abolition Act, having declared that all persons of the age of 6 or upwards who have been registered as slaves should become and be apprenticed laborers, and such registration not having been adopted as respects the islands of the Caymanas, such unregistered slaves have in consequence become entitled to the unqualified enjoyment of their personal freedom.
Slave owners were put in. William Eden the Younger couldn't work the plantation at Pedro St. James. He complained that his former slaves even told him he had to pay them a 5 pence to even bring him a bucket of water. So now he spent his time reading, moving his chair round and round the veranda, chasing the shade. Pedro St. James became a quiet home. No more big public goings-on, just a place of memories. And mosquitoes. In those days, smoke pans filled with buttonwood chips and dung burned in every room in the house, and the stench was more welcome than the mosquitoes.
The pest of mosquitoes is so prevalent that the cattle are destroyed by them. They realize the fable of the vampire. The inhabitants appear to endure a sort of purgatorial existence in the place which would seem to be one of the entrances to the infernal region.
The next 40 years was hard. The turtles got scarce. Lots of people left Cayman for the Bay Islands, looking for a better way of life. And Pedro St. James was getting poorer along with the rest of Cayman. So now I'm coming to the part of the story about the girl with the bucket like I promised.
William was King George's son.
Now, old William Eden the younger, he adopted two boys, Joseph Eden and his brother Samuel. Some people say they were his natural sons by a slave woman, and some say those boys came from Portugal. Now, I don't know about that, but when old Mr. William Eden the younger died, Joseph and Samuel inherited the big house at Pedro Point. Samuel's family lived on the third floor, and Joseph and his family lived on the floor below. Now Joseph Eden, he had a girl named Mary Jean, who was about 17 years old. And one day there came along a big thunderstorm, and Mary Jean and her little brother William, they rushed out with buckets to catch the rainwater, because rain is precious here. And crack! The lightning came down and hit the two children and the old house. It was terrible. The little boy was knocked out, and Mary Jean, she was dead. Poor child. Right there by the steps of her father's house. And Pedro St. James was burning from the lake. It was a terrible thing. And now the families moved out because they thought the big house brought bad luck. They salvaged the timber from the old house to build two small wooden houses nearby, and the old house stood empty. But you can't take away the spirit of a place like Pedro St. James so easily. Families been born here for generations, and the memory has carried on. Miss Elvira still remembered a house full of people.
All the daddy sisters and brothers, Aunt Lucy, and Uncle Matt, and Uncle Harold, and Aggie, and Aunt Ursi, and Aunt Rowena, and Bella, Uncle Wheeler, was a big family then, and they all born there.
The spirit of the old house stayed strong. A few Cayman people and some tourists used the yard for picnics and wondered about the old house that was a ruin. And all this time, Pedro St. James was like it was asleep. But everything started to wake up in the 1940s. From then on, the world started to find Cayman. The flying boats started coming in from Jamaica. People thought tourists might like this place. One of those people was Tom Hubble. He looked at the ruin of the old house and thought it would be a good place to turn into something special for visitors.
I hope to build several villas, and on the waterfront I am constructing thatch shelters for fishermen and divers.
Said the big house was Captain Morgan the pirate's hideout. Rebuilt the house to look more, well, like a castle, and people started calling it Pedro Castle. He, unfortunately, died before his dream was complete. Others came along after and opened restaurants and a bar, and a lot of people had good times here. But it got to be time for Pedro Castle to belong to all of the people of Cayman. I think the story of Pedro St. James is like the story of Cayman. We're discovering our history and making it come back to life. And Pedro St. James's story is strong in my heart. Now, my child, everything I've been telling you is true. And it all happened right here at Pedro St. James. Now, Pedro St. James is alive again, just like when old William Eden the Older built it. As alive as when it was the birthplace of democracy in Cayman. as alive as when the proclamation freeing the slaves was read from its steps. So welcome to Pedro St. James, our National Historic Site, the birthplace of democracy in the Cayman Islands. We Caymanians have preserved it for future generations. Go out now and look around and see it all for yourself.